Daniel Raz, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Fantastic. I appreciate you having me on.
Pleasure is truly mine. I'm excited to dive into the deep end of our conversation today. I feel that there's going to be a lot of back and forths and a lot of different perspectives and opinions, and I think it's going to be an exciting conversation. But before we do dive into that, can you give the listeners a bit of insight into who you are and what it is that you do?
I am an online fitness trainer and I help men sustainably lose weight without going to the gym. And the reason why I chose that is because in 2020, I'm sure you know, when everything shut down, I was a certified personal trainer, no longer able to train at gyms, even myself. And I had to figure out how to get results for myself at home. And I started helping other people do that. But even after the lockdown, I realized that most of the people that need the most help hate going to the gym. So I feel like there's an entire sector population of people that need the most help, but nobody's catering to them. People are only catering to people that do keto or vegan. There's so many different niches. I don't think too many people cater to people that hate going to the gym. So that's what I do.
And what was your journey like with going to home training from training in a gym? Because I can imagine that was quite a transition. I know it was for me at the time. I would have never expected myself to do so much home training in my life, but obviously COVID turned that around for all of us. How was that transition for you?
Because at first I had to do it, I had to figure it out, but a metaphor I like to use is Gordon Ramsay with one pan can make a better meal than the average person can with five pans because it's not about how much equipment you have, it's about knowing what to do. And if you know how to use gravity, you know how to use your body weight, you can have a much better workout than somebody who has all the gym equipment but has no idea what he's doing, right? Because gravity is on your side, you can always manipulate tension with your muscles no matter what's going on. And if you get a very simple pair of bands, then you can truly do everything. Another reason why I like it and a lot of my clients like it is because if your goal is to be a bodybuilding world champion, you definitely need the gym. But if you just want to be lean and fit and have more energy, you can accomplish that with mostly at home 20 to 30 minutes. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. And I believe the biggest obstacle most people face is consistency, right? They don't go to the gym because it kind of feels to them like going to a movie theater. It's like a whole event. It's not part of the life. It's very difficult. But lots of people watch movies at home because it's convenient. So the more convenient you make it, I feel like the easier it is to be consistent. The more consistent you are, the easier it is to get results.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And I think it's important to remind people that, and it's the same as you said with your Gordon Ramsay quote, right? It really doesn't matter if you have the most sophisticated routine or equipment in the world. It really comes down to how often you're actually picking up those different pots and pans versus just picking up that one and how effectively you can use it as well. So I think that's a really, really good starting point. And when it comes to your own personal journey as well, what got you started within health and fitness to begin with?
So I was born in Israel. When I was six, my family and I moved to China, and this was in 2004. China was very different than what it was then than what it is now. Just like what you think it was in the movies. There was skinless dogs people ate, like all sorts of animals you walked. It was crazy. Now it's a lot more westernized. Chinese food in China, especially in the early 2000s, is not Panda Express. It's not typical American Chinese food. It's very, very different. And I was an extremely picky eater. So between the ages of 6 to 12, I ate nothing but McDonald's chicken nuggets and Starbucks hot chocolate. Did not consume anything else. The most unhealthy child there was. And at the age of 12, I started playing basketball, and my brother convinced me that if I wanted to get better at playing basketball, I should start eating healthier, which was pretty much any diet except what I was doing. So I slowly started getting more to nutrition aspects. I remember the first time I tried grilled cheese, very basic foods, but I slowly started expanding my taste buds. And that got me more into the nutrition aspect. And at age 17, I started lifting weights and taking my fitness more seriously. And I noticed that before that, I was confident on the basketball court, but nowhere else. I did not feel that confidence translate into everyday life. But after I started lifting weights and getting more into the fitness side, I realized that I took my body with me everywhere I went. The confidence came with it, which was a much more transferable skill than basketball, and that got me into more the fitness sense, and that made me want to be a certified personal trainer. I went to university in Canada for an exercise and nutrition degree, right? Worked in a few gyms. Then, as I mentioned, 2020, everything shut down. That's when I started my online thing.
Got you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's always good to hear when people have gone through their own personal journey. It doesn't sound like you were like 30 kilos overweight or anything like that, but you can definitely relate to having poor nutrition and not really having much knowledge there and wanting to improve that. Also, going from a lack of confidence to having confidence and being able to use that as a transferable skill as well, which is obviously super, super valuable and something that a lot of people will be looking for as well. So, yeah, I love that aspect. And when it came to going to the gym and kind of getting into that, did it just stick thereafter, or was it something that you had to work on getting to stick?
Definitely something I had to work on, but the benefits of being in a sports team or just being in high school in general is you have a very strong support system. That's why most people, I believe, are in the best shape of their life in high school, and from there it just goes down. Because after high school, they don't have a support system, and they don't have that accountability. They don't have anybody there to do it with them, so they don't have hold themselves accountable, and the fitness goes down the drain. That's why no matter what stage of life you're at, always having someone or something to hold you accountable makes all the difference. So in high school it was easy, right? But then later on, you need to be able to develop that skill set, just like brushing your teeth, right? Initially you need someone to like tell you to brush your teeth every single morning, but after that you don't need anybody to tell you anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Eventually, it becomes something that's locked into your habits, and you not only see the benefit from that, you also see the anti benefit from that if you don't end up doing it as well. So, no, it's a good point. And obviously, fast forward to today, you mentioned that you work with people who don't like to go to the gym, who don't want to go to the gym, and go through the process of sustainable weight loss. And also, it seems like you help people drop a decent amount. It's not just like 5, 10 kilos, but it seems to be 25 to 35 kilos or 50 to 100 pounds if we're talking in that language.
100%, because I believe if you go from looking decent to having a six pack, your life would improve honestly incrementally, because not everyone wants to just show off for Instagram. That's definitely a sector of the population. But I believe if you drop 40 kilos or 100 pounds, that truly changes your life in every way, in the way you sleep, in the way you walk, in the way you interact with other people. Obviously, your medications, how many decades extra you live, truly changes your life completely. And that's why I like to focus on that. And again, what's interesting is those people, often the last thing they even want to think about is going to the gym, because they're either intimidated or they simply don't have time. They have too many things going on. They would much rather do a 25-minute home workout than go to the gym for an hour. And yeah, there's a big sector of the population just not being targeted, not being helped enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found the same during the pandemic as well. Obviously, a lot of people went into home training because they had to, but then it was interesting to see how many people then decided that their home setup was significantly better than going to the gym. And they were able to save minutes by, not having to do the commute. Like you said, there was a lot less resistance. There was all these other types of benefits as well. And like you said, it's also a non-intimidating environment. It's your home ultimately, so it seems to be really beneficial. And I want to zoom out and I want to talk a little bit more about weight loss as a whole to begin with. So, with the clients that you've worked with, what have you found as one of the most effective formulas when it comes to weight loss? Because there seems to be many different messages, many different formulas, ways of doing things. What have you found to be the most effective for you and your clients?
So I like to start with what I call the easy wins, which is basically the opposite approach of what most people do. Because if you look at January 1st, everyone who hasn't exercised or ate healthy for months all of a sudden says, I'm going to drink 7 liters of water a day, eat nothing but bananas and lettuce, and run a marathon every single day. Probably not going to stick with it for more than a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks max. And obviously that caused you to give up, right? Like people set super unrealistic expectations to themselves, and that never lasts. But if you focus on things that take minimal time and effort but move the needle in your favor, you see positive results, you see tangible results, and that will keep you motivated. So, as an example, I always have a water bottle within arm's reach at all times. Super easy, but makes a dramatic difference. Another example of an easy win is whenever I'm talking on the phone, I'm always standing and walking, right? I'm never sitting down because I'm going to be having the conversation anyways. Might as well burn extra calories. So different things like that, if you implement into your daily life, again, doesn't take any extra time, takes minimal effort, but it gets you tangible results. And when you see the scale drop down, when you feel your clothes fit better, then you want to do more of the right things.
So you start with those easy wins, and then what's the next step after those easy wins?
After that, then obviously we can, I still give them workouts, but after that, we can ramp up the workouts because I believe people are willing to give a lot of effort as long as they know it works. So we should start with things that work and but take minimal effort. And then people are able to push themselves more into the workout, into walking more, into obviously with the nutrition, and even with the nutrition aspect. I believe if your diet has a name, it's probably not sustainable for most people. Because keto probably works fantastic for a small section of the population, but for most people, I think it should be a U diet. So one of the first exercises I get my clients to do is simply write a list of everything they enjoy eating. Don't filter if it's expensive, convenient, just write a list of everything. After that, underline what's also healthy. Now, ideally, obviously, I'm there to help them because there's always myths of what they think is healthy but really isn't, or things that they think are unhealthy but really isn't that bad. Once you have a list of things you enjoy eating and that's healthy, that is your meal plan. If you eat that 80% of the time, that'll be extremely easy to stick to and will get you the best results you can. And I believe in general, diet isn't about diminishing how much food you eat, it's about eating more. So food you enjoy. So you have the list of foods that you enjoy and are healthy. That's 80% of your diet. 10% you can eat whatever you want, it doesn't matter. And then the other 10% is to try new healthy foods. So go to the grocery store, try new vegetable or fish that you've never tried. If you're traveling in Thailand, try a new exquisite cuisine you haven't tried. There might be more healthy, tasty foods that you don't even know is tasty because you've never tried it. So I believe the best diet is about expanding your taste buds, trying new foods, just like I did when I was 12 and I was the most picky eater on the planet.
Yeah, expanding your horizons from chicken nuggets and hot chocolate. That's a big step in a different direction, that's for sure. So, coming back to them getting their easy wins, establishing their nutrition plan, doing their workouts, and like you said, finding something that works for them, most people on their journey end up running into sticking points. Maybe they've reached a stage of their journey where they've dropped, like you said, 20, 30 pounds, but they still have another, sometimes 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds to lose. So a lot of people come super, super far with their journey, but they still got a long way to go. How do you navigate that stage of the journey, which a lot of people get stuck at? And in some cases, some of them want to continue moving forward, but they also now feel like, wow, I'm 20, 30 pounds down. My goal was 100 pounds, but I feel much better than I did 6 weeks ago.
So yeah, that's when having daily accountability is so important because anybody can lose weight when conditions are perfect. But when things are extra chaotic and not ideal, that's when having someone shift your mindset makes all the difference between, as you mentioned, staying stuck and going down. My clients also experience plateau, but they experience a plateau for a week, not for a decade, because I can see the sticking point and then make the small adjustment. And it's important to remember that if you think about from winter to summer, overall, the temperature will increase. However, it's not going to increase every single day. There might very realistically be a day in August that's colder than a day in November. That doesn't mean that the sun is a scam, doesn't mean that seasons don't work, it doesn't mean that the earth should rotate the other way. There's going to be fluctuations even if you do everything right. However, if you have been stuck for a long time or the weight is not going in the direction you want for a long time, then yes, you should probably change something. And it might not be the thing that you might think it is. Maybe your nutrition is really good, you're exercising very well, but your sleep is awful. So sometimes it's not what people think about that's the sticking point, which is again why having a outside eye, another perspective is so beneficial.
Yeah, I think that outside eye is also beneficial because a lot of people think that they're doing things 110% in the right way. But then there's another aspect of sometimes nothing needs to change except they need to be a more adherent to the plan because sometimes the extra things slipped in that was somehow forgot to be mentioned, or they started cooking with a little bit of oil, or their wife or husband started cooking for them and they weren't measuring the things in the way they were, right? That those things exist.
100%, that's so true because everyone remembers the salad they ate 3 days ago, but forgot about the donut they ate 2 hours ago. So once you no longer have to tell anyone what you're eating, it's very easy to forget and really convince yourself that you are doing everything right, when in fact, that's not the case.
Yeah, I get it. A lot of people will say that, no, I barely eat anything. I have a salad for lunch. I have, most of the time I skip breakfast and then I just, I have like a light, easy dinner. I'm like, wait a minute. No, I sometimes have that croissant in the morning and a latte on the way to work. If I have that 5 p.m. crash, then, I have something to pick me back up. And then there's that glass of wine in the evening as well. And like, oh, well, that's where all the calories are coming from, right? So, yeah, it's really important to reflect and, have someone, like you said, that outside eye, because sometimes it's pretty hard to realize ourselves. I do the same. Sometimes I track on my fitness pal, I put everything in and like I forgot I had those extra 2 squares of dark chocolate, or someone brought hummus last night and I had that alongside my normal meal but I didn't even realize.
Yeah, it's definitely super easy to forget, especially the things that you eat quick that you almost don't want anybody to see that you eat. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. And in regards to weight loss as a whole, when it comes to, let's say, someone who's dropping 5 to 10 kilos, is there a big difference between those people you work with when they're dropping 5 to 10 kilos versus those who need to drop 20 to 30 kilos?
Yeah, I definitely believe the way you approach it is super important. That's why whenever I work with someone, I always like to ask what the end goal is. Because if you think about building a 10-story building versus a 100-story building, the foundation is completely different. And if the person who's trying to build a 100-story building has a 10-story building foundation, the building will fall down. That's why so many people lose, 20 pounds, then gain back, lose 20 pounds, then gain back when they want to lose 100 pounds, because the way they approach it is not sustainable. They go for a sprint when it's a marathon, and that leads you in last place or not even finishing the race at all. So definitely the approach is different. And obviously, people want to get the before and after as quickly as possible, but really taking a long term sustainable approach is much better, right? That's why could I get my clients to drop, if a client wants to drop 100 pounds, could I get them to drop that? Could I get them to drop, 50 pounds in 3 months? Sure, but they'll probably gain it back. I'd much rather them drop the 50 pounds in 9, 8, or 10 months and then continue to drop weight. And in a half, maybe 2 years, they drop the full 100. That's a lot more sustainable. Sometimes it's honestly the coach's fault, not the client's fault, because also the coaches, they want to have a quick before and after for more testimonials for the marketing. But as the coach, you need to have a long term vision as well. Be like, hey, let's ask for the end goal and have their best interest in mind for the long term, right? I might not get the best marketing for a year and a half, but after that, then it will be phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's worth it. Like when you think about why you started to become a coach, it wasn't to post your before and afters, right? It was to help people get in phenomenal shape. And I think that there's always that conflict as a coach. And I know that I had that maybe earlier in my career especially when I worked for different companies who were very fixated on these transformation images as well. It's a big challenge that I think a lot of people go through. So, you have the industry spitting out very, very quick and fast results. And then you also have coaches posting these transformations every couple of weeks or so. But I think the transparency on how long these things takes is really important. And it's kind of responsibility of us as health and fitness coaches to be very, very real with the people that we work with and the things that we say on social media as well. So how do you navigate that when someone comes to you and they're like, hey, how long do you think my journey will take? I get that question all the time. And I'm like, if I stick to everything 100%, or even if I don't, how long will it take? And, the answer is always, it depends. But usually it's much, much longer than they anticipated, right? Like most people are like, 2, 3 months or even 2, 3 weeks, and then ends up being more like, okay, well, if you want to sustain this result as well, you're looking at maybe between 6 and 12 months, if not longer. So how do you have that conversation with people, and how does that go down? Because a lot of people, someone said it on this podcast before, we live in an Amazon Prime generation where everyone wants everything yesterday, let alone 6 to 12 months time.
100%. So obviously, firstly ask well, how long did it take you to put on that weight? I'm like, okay, probably 20 years. Okay, so 20 years, we're not going to reverse that in 3 weeks. It's going to take more than that. And setting expectations is super important because if you think about, let's say you have a flight that was supposed to take 7 hours, but instead it took 9 hours. For the extra 2 hours, you'd be pissed, you'd be frustrated, you'd be super annoyed. But if you expect it to take 7 hours, but it only took 5 hours, all of a sudden you'll be happy, like, oh, it only took 5 hours, that's fantastic. However, if your expectation is that it's going to take 3 hours, but then it actually took 5 hours, then again you're frustrated and pissed off. So setting your expectations correctly matters a lot. And same thing with weight loss. The reason people quit, the reason people get frustrated and give up is because they set super unrealistic expectations from themselves, right? They see the one guy, they see David Goggins dropped 100 pounds in 3 months. I'm like, yeah, that's David Goggins. he, so you have to really be realistic of what you can achieve. But if you stay consistent with it, then the results would be better than you expect, right? Once you, it's not going to happen faster, but once you actually don't have joint pain and have more energy and fit better into your clothes and you're able to sustain that no matter what, that's going to be worth it. So, yeah, it's really emphasizing a long term vision, which is difficult to do, but obviously super crucial.
Yeah, I have 3 points off the back of what you just mentioned. I'm going to try and remember all of them. The first one is that you get milestones along the way, right? Yes, you want to drop 100 pounds, but you still get the opportunity to drop 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And as you mentioned, you feel better at every single checkpoint. And I think sometimes people go in with the mindset of like, I'll only be happy once I reach that 100-pound drop, but underestimate how good they actually feel when they just are moving in the direction of their goal. Sometimes it just takes 2 weeks for someone to be on plan and they feel a little less bloated. You know, the clothes aren't fitting so tight, feel a little bit more energetic in the morning and they feel fantastic. Like that's sometimes more than enough to keep their motivation sparked and going. The second aspect for me is that the time's going to pass anyway. So even if it's going to take 12 months or 12 years, realistically, you're still going to be living those. So what would you prefer to do? To put that effort in and move in the right direction of your goal, or to stay where you are, or progressively get worse? Like that's another aspect as well. I can't remember my third point, but I think those two kind of cement your point as well, in the sense of like, you know, setting those expectations realistically is going to serve you far, far better because the time's going to pass anyway and you're going to feel better during that process too.
100%. I believe the biggest mindset difference between people that are fit and people that are not fit is that people that are fit view health and fitness through a continuum, and people that are not fit view health fitness as binary. So people think I will only feel good once I reach the goal. But the reality is, the closer I am to that goal, the better I'll feel. And binary thinking also goes to working out and eating healthy. So let's say that the plan was to work out for 30 minutes, but life happened extremely chaotic, you only have 20 minutes. The unfit person says, well, I was planning to work out for 30 minutes, I only have 20 minutes, I won't do anything. The fit person says, I planned on working out for 30 minutes, I only have 20 minutes, I'll do 20 minutes, right? As long as you go closer to the goal, you'll succeed. Also, in terms of eating healthy, let's say the objective scenario is you only have junk food around and you're craving, and you don't have any healthy food options at all. The unfit person says, well, you can't blame me. I don't have any options. I only have unhealthy options. What do I do? The fit person says, well, even from all the unhealthy options, there's still the healthiest option. There's still the best option I can make. So it's all about not viewing as a 100% win or 100% loss. This, whatever you can do to move closer to the positive direction, you'll win. And yeah, I think this applies when things go well and when things go badly. So a tangible example, if let's say your goal is to whatever walk 8,000 steps a day, and let's say you had an extremely busy day, you only walked 2,000. Again, the fit person says, okay, the person with the right mindset will say, there's no way I'll get to 8,000. However, I am at 2,000 steps. Can I get to 4,000? Probably. Let me do that. So that's when things are negative, but also when things are positive. Let's say you had a phenomenal day. Again, the goal was 8,000, but you happen to already walk 10,000 steps. The unfit person says, the person with the unfit mindset will say, I already surpassed my goal. Cool, I'm going to relax. The fit person says, okay, I really surpassed my goal, but I have a few more hours left. Might as well get some more.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Yeah, that is exactly the case. And it's a sense of saying it's not just about that given day and it's not an all or nothing mindset. I think that that all or nothing mindset has to be left behind if you want sustainable results. And it's the same with people who maybe fall off track when it comes to their diet as well. You know, maybe they just don't have a good evening, good night, or whatever it is. They don't then turn that into a 3 day weekend of not eating well at all. They wipe the slate clean the next morning, they reflect and see if they can learn, and then they move on, but they don't catastrophize. I think that's the big thing when it comes to sustainable long-term results, is that they don't get too high with the high or too lows with the lows. They just focus on progress, pushing forward, and yeah, thinking of it, as you mentioned earlier, not in the sense of a sprint, but this is a marathon, and there's no actual finish line, right? Because of your health and wellness, it's always changing, and it's here until you are no longer here. So realistically, the finish line is kind of ever moving, and it's not really there. It's just a bunch of checkpoints along the way and bunch of checkpoints along the way. And I think a lot of people might see that as a little bit like, but what am I working towards? It's like, well, each checkpoint, once again, you're getting better and you're getting better. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people would start needing to focus on versus kind of the finish line mentality.
And obviously, mindset is everything. And I feel like the word mindset in general just gets throws, thrown out a lot. Like people just say that word without really thinking what it means. And I believe a lot of people think that mindset is about positive thinking and about affirmations. But in my opinion, having the right mindset is simply viewing reality for what it is, because a positive fitness mindset, like the best fitness mindset is simply viewing reality for what it is. Everything is a continuum, avoiding binary thinking, realizing that you can always move in the positive direction no matter what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. And transitioning back onto the nutrition side of things, we hear thinking, yeah, speaking of things that get thrown around a lot, intermittent fasting is another kind of buzz term and very, very popular right now. What's your thoughts on intermittent fasting?
So again, it's just a word. It's not more powerful than anything else. If you're in a caloric deficit, you lose weight. It doesn't matter if you eat 5 meals a day or 1 meal a day. I believe the biggest benefit of intermittent fasting is simply your schedule. Because if you're truly busy, if you truly have a lot of things going on, you don't have time to eat. Quick tangent, right? People, when they get extremely busy, they usually stress eat and they usually stop working out. And that causes them to have less energy, causes them to be more stressed. But a person with the right mindset, which anybody can cultivate, says, okay, I'm extremely busy. I don't have time to eat. I'm not going to eat. Hey, I'm extremely stressed. What's the best way to relieve stress? Do a super intense workout. So if you do the opposite of what most people do, you'll actually get much better results. But I believe fasting is a great tool, mostly for your health, and will help you with your schedule. In terms of weight loss, anything can be beneficial. Whatever you can stick to is the most beneficial way. I believe everyone should fast for 24, maybe 48 hours at least once so they know they can do it. And if you want to fast every day, like intermittent fasting, so like 16, 18 hours a day, or even 12, or even like 14 hours, doesn't matter. Just to prove yourself that you can, that might be beneficial. And I believe do it if it works for your schedule, because that's the probably the biggest benefit of fasting, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like that mindset of trying it out, especially the 24-48, just to see if you can do it. Because I think a lot of people have this idea that if they don't eat for any given amount of time, that they're just going to run out of energy and fall flat on the floor, and they can't exist without eating if it's past like 4 hours or 6 hours or whatever the belief is, right? So it's always nice to say, well, how does my body respond? And it's not necessarily something that you need to do on a regular basis. I've probably done a handful of those fasts in my entire life. I've not done a ton of them by any means. But like you said, I think it's more the learning experience. And then when it comes to intermittent fasting, I'm glad you said that, because of I think so many people think it's this magical tool that's going to help them magically lose weight. And people start talking about all these kind of benefits of fasting. It's like, well, yeah, it's great every now and again. But for most people, it's actually not the most beneficial thing because of, not eating for a period of time can be quite stressful. And if you add that stress onto your already existing stressful life, and especially if you're a woman as well and you're going through your menstrual cycle or something along those lines, and then you're doing that super intense HIIT class and you're having caffeine and it's loading up all of your cortisol in the morning on top of you not eating and your kids are stressing you out, like, what do you think that's going to lead to? And just because someone said, intermittent fasting is this amazing magical thing. Like, the thing is most of the time it works really, really well for someone, and therefore if it works really well for that someone else thinks they're going to have those similar results. But I think it's always about recognizing, you probably noticed this as well, is that everyone's body responds differently to different things. Even if you put the same thing in, you will not get the same thing out.
Yeah, 100%. Again, that's why individualized approach is the best way to go about it. Because a lot of people think, yeah, that one size fits all can work for everyone. Because if I say, hey, green means go, red means stop, here's the car keys, don't crash, that might be enough instruction for some people. But for most people, if they've never driven a car before, they will crash. And it's not their fault, just because there's a thousand little nuances. Even though everyone knows to move more, eat less, that's often not enough instruction for most people to get the sustainable results they desire.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people have tried that and they feel like it's almost an simplification, in the sense that if someone's depressed, for example, you don't say, be more happy and be less sad, right? It's like, well, obviously, if you want to be less depressed, that's kind of an obvious formula, but it really doesn't always work that way. And, yes, black and white, it definitely works. Increasing the activities that you do to make you happy and decreasing the ones that make you sad, then yeah. And the same goes with the food input and the activity output. But as we know, it's not always the same. I like that car analogy you used there, because of it will be a different response for each and every single person as well. And with that being said, do you think that there's any kind of superior dieting method? Do you think that all diet should be sustainable as well, or do you have a little bit of a different perspective?
So yeah, I believe whatever you can sustain for is best. And there's nothing wrong with going quote unquote extreme for a few days just to see how it feels like. Because you don't know how different food reacts unless you eliminate it or you try different foods. So in general, I believe that most importantly, for most people, your diet probably shouldn't have a name. Because what are the odds that somebody else's diet works perfectly for you? Pretty slim, right? Just try different foods, just see what works, see what doesn't. And again, people use labels because it's a lot easier to comprehend words that way. But when people say, hey, avoid fruits and you lose weight, is it all fruits? Is it some? Because maybe only a particular number of fruits have a negative reaction to some person. Or when people say try keto, be like, okay, so I can never have any carbs ever at all. Again, I believe if a diet has a name, it's probably not sustainable. So have a you diet. That's the biggest thing. Find foods that you enjoy, that are healthy, that you feel like you can stick to. And again, as I mentioned earlier, 10% of your diet can be whatever you want. It doesn't matter if it's not a huge percentage.
And you mentioned earlier one of the biggest benefits to intermittent fasting is if it works for your schedule, and if you are truly like a very, very busy individual, you might not have the opportunities to eat. Do you have any advice for those people who are super, super busy but still want to get some results? Because we all live in this world where we just don't have a moment for ourselves. And for some people, that's a complete misrepresentation of reality. They're just not using the time in an effective way. And that's another story for another day. But there's some people who do have their schedules kind of packed from the moment they open their eyes to the moment they close them. And what's your advice for those people?
I would say as long as you planned out, you can still get phenomenal results. So if you meal prep or get somebody else to meal prep or have a bunch of healthy, tasty, quick options, then it's a lot easier to make the right choice. Because a banana is quicker than like fries from McDonald's, right? Or there's so many like canned beans, canned tuna, right? Like almost all fruits, like even like sandwiches, right? Like ground beef, ground chicken take like 5 minutes to make, right? There's a lot of healthy, tasty foods that are super quick. That if you just more conscious of, you can make the right choice. So I would say just it's all about just planning ahead, and you're way more likely to succeed in the long term if you know exactly what you're eating. You're not just because if you don't plan, then I crave this, I'm just gonna eat this. Whatever's on the go, whatever's close by, and that usually isn't the best option.
No, and I think you made a good point earlier in the sense of recognizing that it all comes down to making sure that you have that approach that works for you. Because of realistically, a lot of people might use that excuse as I'm too busy to even do anything, that it ends up being their reality, so that therefore they don't have to make the effort when it comes to their workouts and their nutrition. But like you said, it's like that person who hasn't been able to do 2,000 steps and therefore, or 8,000 steps because they're on 2,000. They're like, no, well, I'm not going to bother because I'm never going to get to 8,000, right? And it's like, well, if I don't have the opportunity to do things perfectly, maybe this can be my excuse as to why I remain overweight, I remain in this comfortable position, right?
100%. So many people want to have justifiable excuse to not win, but that might make you feel a bit better in the moment. But at the end of the day, like, who are you proving it to that you're a victim? Like, it's all on you, right? It's all on you for you to get where you want to get to. And this is a bit of a tangent, but I believe everyone wants to feel better, right? And a lot of people associate, if you look like from a scale of 1 to 10, if you think 10 is the best feeling, 1 is the worst feeling, people describe the words happy as 10 and sad as 1. But I don't think that's accurate. I think happy is like an 8 and sad is like a 3. I think if you want to get a 10, that's you feeling proud, and 1 is you feeling ashamed. Let's say if you watch a sad movie, you might feel sad. But if you do things that you know you weren't supposed to do, but you did it anyways, or you cheated, or you stole, you did something that you know you weren't supposed to, that's probably a worse feeling. And on the other end, if you eat ice cream, yeah, sure, that'll make you feel happy. But if you accomplished a goal, or if your kid graduated high school, you probably feel proud. You feel like a sense of achievement after you overcome something tough. And that's probably a better feeling. So if instead of asking yourself, will this make me happy? Ask yourself, will this make me proud? You're more likely to make better decisions that will actually get you where you want to get to. So in terms of your weight loss or your journey, be like, yeah, it'll make me happier if I have a justifiable excuse not to win. But I will be more proud if I find a way to win no matter what happens.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I really do. And I think it's just about addressing that mentality, because of if you stay stuck in your same position based on your own kind of poor excuses, no one wins. And the worst thing is that you don't win, and you're the most important person in your own life. And therefore, if you're not winning based on things that you're kind of just making up and don't really make sense, it just it only sucks for you. Like it's not great for the people around you, but the biggest person who loses is you. So I think that, yeah, your reality is very, very true, and it might be very difficult at moments, but I think it's just trying to find ways in which you can make things work around your reality and not be so black and white with your thinking. And coming into kind of ways of thinking and weight loss as a whole, I think the biggest challenge, as we've alluded to, is sustaining that weight loss, right? So many people are able to lose weight, but so many people cannot keep it off. And that's why I'm super passionate about sharing more and more things that help people sustain it in the long term for decades later, not just for the beach holiday or whatever they wanted it for. So, why do you think that most people don't maintain the results they achieve?
I think it all comes down again to mindset, to who you are as a person. Because if you label yourself, if you identify as a smoker and you want to stop smoking, eventually you'll keep smoking again. Doesn't matter how long you go for. Especially if like, hey, I stopped smoking for 3 days, for 4 days. If you keep counting, you still identify as part of who you are. And if you're a person that doesn't smoke, it doesn't take any willpower not to smoke. Or if you're a person that doesn't drink, it doesn't take any willpower not to drink. So once you're able to shift your identity, it's not even difficult to remain where you are. So yeah, it all comes down to mindset. And I feel like to truly change your mindset, you need to have an individual conversation with a person. It's difficult just to read a PDF online and change who you are. I think there's so many nuances of the way people talk, the way people label themselves, which cause them to not get sustainable results. So, as an example, I don't let my clients say I fell off the wagon or I completely dropped off or nothing went well. Like I don't let them say that. I'm like, hey, let's think about it in a continuum instead of binary thinking. If this is 100%, this 0%, you probably didn't do 0%. You probably something went right. I doubt that throughout this week nothing went right. So from a scale of -10 to +10, What are you? Well, probably a -8. I'm like, okay, cool. What can you do today to get yourself to -7? That's it. Just improve slightly. And as long as you, again, head in the right direction, you're more likely to continue to head in the right direction and get the best results. So it's all about avoiding, it's having the right mindset. And there's so many different examples of having the right mindset that a fit person has and avoiding the wrong mindset, which is what got people in the first place.
Yeah, so I personally don't believe that realistically we should have coaches forever when it comes to our weight loss pursuits or for our health. You know, if we want to improve within our strength training or our marathon training, whatever that might be, then it's completely fair, or for sport or something along those lines. So when it comes to then people not having that accountability anymore and moving into the world on their own to maintain their health and fitness, obviously that shift in mindset is required. But if that works for a year, that's amazing. But what we find is that we go through these different seasons of life, right? Someone you might have worked with in the past then has kids and they maybe lose their job, or they get promoted into an even bigger job, or they start their own business and they've got a bunch of different things going on. So they might have learnt all the systems and habits during a moment which they could navigate, but then a ton of life changes come at them. How do they then continue to hold on? Do you still think it comes down to their identity continuing to prevail, the good habits that they built in the past, or do you think it's something a little bit different?
Yeah, I do think it's about the skills that you have because no matter what country you put me in, I can always drive from point A to point B because I have the skill set. It doesn't matter what country you put me in, even if I can't read the menu, I will always look like me because I know what healthy looks like. Doesn't matter if I have a bunch of equipment or no equipment, I still know how to work out. So once you have that as a part of you, doesn't matter what circumstance you're in, you can always make it happen. And when unfamiliar scenarios come up, that should almost excite you because I can't call myself a competent driver if I've only ever driven on an empty highway with no cars and it's just me. I can only call myself a competent driver if I've driven in the snow, in the rain, through traffic, during accidents, when there's crazy people driving behind me and in front of me, in different countries with different rules, with stoplights not working, with homeless people running on the highway. Like, I can only call myself a competent driver once I've experienced all that. So if you want to be a competent person in general, you're going to have to keep doing the right things despite chaos arising, despite all hell breaking loose, because that will happen. And that should excite you because you should tell yourself, hey, if I can achieve my goals despite all this, then no matter what happens, I can sustain the results.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say that to people I work with when they go through a holiday or a wedding season or whatever it might be. I'm like, just imagine if you get through this, how easy it's going to be when you're on the other side of it. And like you said, these challenges should excite you because of their tools and tricks that you can use for the future. And usually they're very transferable. Once you've learned to navigate a certain road, to use your analogy, then you can navigate another. And sometimes it doesn't work always the same, but usually, generally, once you've got the foundations in place and you know the way to kind of navigate and where you're going, then usually you can navigate every single situation. So I like that as well. And Daniel, this has been a really, really insightful conversation. I want to wrap up with a final couple of questions. And the first is, what impact do you want to have on the world with the work that you do?
I don't think I've ever been asked that. So, yeah, I just change people's lives, as cliche as that sound. I believe changing one person's life tremendously is more beneficial than changing 1,000 people's life a bit. Because when you truly change somebody else's life tremendously, then that has ripple effect into everyone they know. So I believe going deep with just a few people is a lot more beneficial than surface level with hundreds of thousands of people. So that's my main priority.
Yeah, I like that perspective a lot. And where's the best place for people to find you if they want to keep up with the work that you're doing?
I am most active on Twitter or X at Daniel Raz underscore fit, but you can also find me on Instagram, Daniel Raz underscore fit, YouTube, Daniel Raz fit, LinkedIn, I just started Daniel Raz fit, and my website, danielrazfit.com.
Amazing. We'll make sure that all that's in the show notes below. But Daniel, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.